everyone. Happy Juneteenth. Thank you for being here at our Juneteenth flag raising here at Riverfront Park. We are here with our Juneteenth Planning Committee. Thank you guys for all the great work. We will be raising the Juneteenth flag in commemoration of this day. Then we will be doing a parade to the Fitchburg Abolitionist Park at 50 Snow Street, where there will be an Abolitionist Juneteenth celebration at 11:30. It starts at the Fitchburg Abolitionist Park. We have a Buy Black Market at Fitchburg City Hall from 3 to 6 p.m. And after that, a Buy Black Market after party at Canvas by Coffee Corps, right up here in the Dickinson Building, 326 Main Street. And we also have the World Cup watch parties, which are happening at Coolidge Park. We'd throw that in. Let's, Miles, are you going to raise the, all right, we will raise the Juneteenth flag. Do you guys want to say something?
It's tomorrow's event. So don't forget to come out tomorrow, come out today for sure, to all the events. But don't forget to come out tomorrow at 12 o'clock right here in Riverfront Park for our 4th annual Fitchburg Juneteenth Collaborative Celebration. 12 to 3 o'clock. Open to the community, everybody, free.
Yeah. And this is Leona, and I'm Annie, and we are the co-chairs and founder of the Juneteenth Community Collaborative, established in 2023. So thank you, God, for the weather. The first 2 years, we got rained out completely, totally, but now the last 2 years, we are so grateful and thankful for everyone, and everyone that's joined us.
Right.
And we have some new folks down here.
Exactly. And this wouldn't happen without the city's support. You know, tomorrow we'll be doing a lot of thank yous, but since we're on camera, thank you to the city of Fitchburg, our mayor. Thank you to Chief Giannetti for coming. Thank you, Miles, for your support always. James, Bunnell, wherever you are, thank you. Where'd he go? Okay, he's gone. Nate, of course, has always been with us, supporting us. David, all the committees, all the officers, and DPW, the council. We just want to thank everyone for helping us behind the scenes, always making this event a success. So thank you.
All right.
Woo!
You got it, Miles?
You got it, Miles. Woo-hoo! Oh yeah, you got it.
What a perfect flag waving day.
Nice job.
It is.
I'm with the Fitchburg Abolitionist Park project. We have an event at Abolitionist Park from 11:30 to about 2:30 today. But part of the festivities, obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on this week. We got stuff, the Abolitionist Park, we had the Juneteenth flag raising here. We've got Buy Black Market later on today, and Buy Black Market after party over here at Canvas. And then tomorrow there's a large Juneteenth event as well over here at the Riverfront Park. So we got a lot of festivities, best holiday of the year. And I wanted to just say, well, first of all, thank you to the Fitchburg High School band for coming out today to perform and celebrate. There's no better way to celebrate Juneteenth than with music. So we appreciate y'all taking the time to come out. And actually, I wanted to turn it over to Theo, who's actually approached me about it because he had a friend talk to him about something he's going to talk to you about, which is why we're doing this historic tour, which I'm going to lead. But there's other significance related to why we chose the route we chose. So turn it over. Thank you, Theo. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. All right, cool. Good morning, everybody. Happy Juneteenth. Thanks to David for, again, working with me on this project. Believe it or not, this actually wasn't even my idea. This was Zoe Graham, Fitchburg class of 2024, currently at, I believe, Framingham State. Yeah. So she approached me with the idea for a parade to commemorate the grandmother of Juneteenth. I don't know if you know her name. Her name is Opal Lee. She walked 2.5 miles every day in a series of cities until she reached from where she lived to the White House to get Juneteenth to become a federal holiday, because Juneteenth was already being celebrated all around the United States. It just wasn't recognized federally, because we know what Juneteenth stands for and what it's about. about 2.5 years after the signing of the, I believe, the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, Union soldiers marched to Galveston, Texas, to let the slaves know that they were free. And that was 2.5 years later, after the fact. And so the 2.5 miles is to commemorate the time it took for the slaves to realize that they were actually free. Well, we say free-ish, and we know what that means. I'm not going to get into much detail about that. So we chose this route because we wanted to hit 2.5 miles. We came kind of close. We'll adjust some things maybe later on. But we wanted to pick spots that had significant history because, believe it or not, whether you guys know, Fitchburg has history in abolition. It has history with the fight against slavery. And as we go through the tour, we're going to hit some stops along the way, and David is going to give a little bit of an overview as to each specific location and its importance to abolition, its importance to Juneteenth, and its importance to the city of Fitchburg and its rich history. So, without further ado, let's get this party started.
Thank you. All right, welcome to the first stop. I'm going to talk about this church in a minute, but I first need to recognize that the abolitionist movement there's always been a fight from the day that folks were abducted to the day that slavery ended in the United States. There's always been a fight. Yes, and that fight continues, right? The other thing, this point on the tour starts with 1843. It really is sort of the beginning of where the history books begin. In Fitchburg, there's a book called Around the World in Fitchburg. You might learn a little bit about this history, but it could be updated. One of the things I want to say before I get into 1843 and this church is that women in Fitchburg were holding it down long before men were on the scene in the abolitionist movement. We got to give recognition to that. The women in Fitchburg were organizing anti-slavery bazaars and fundraisers for the American Anti-Slavery Society in the 1830s, right? And they were holding these things and holding events over at Fitchburg City Hall, which we'll stop and talk about in a minute. But I am going to start with the history here. This was the Calvinist church back in the 1840s and before that. There were two of the strongest forms of activism that existed in the 1840s and through the 1860s. One of them was Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which I'll talk more about later because there's a relationship between Uncle Tom's Cabin and Fitchburg. There's also, just to point out, if people don't know who Harriet Beecher Stowe is, it's the first best-selling novel in the United States, sold over 1 million copies, and it was about slavery. And Harriet Beecher Stowe actually spoke at City Hall in the, which I'll talk about when we get to there. There was something called the Fitchburg Athenaeum, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in 1843, the second thing that one of the most powerful forms of activism or tactics in activism that existed was for Christian churches to sign proclamations condemning slavery as not Christian, right? And the parishioners here, the members of this church, approached the pastor and the board of trustees and said, we would like to sign one of these proclamations as a church. And the pastor fought it and said, no, we're not doing that. And so if you look on some of the papers that I give you, and I apologize about those papers, they're big and it's windy. Benjamin Snow, who was the vice president of the American Anti-Slavery Society, lived in Fitchburg, nailed a note to the door, basically, actually, let me read it. This says, the old church was removed, but a firing shot was fired by Benjamin Snow Jr., who the day before its removal nailed these lines to the door. Dear as thou art, yet because of thy style, To heat up our ovens, we'll make these a pile. And when from thine ashes a sealed house doth rise, great, great is our Babylon. Wheel about the sky. Sorry, Mike. I know it's like Old English, so it's weird, but sorry. One sec. Technology. You can tell you're getting old when your technology is not great. The second part. Then southern response comes on wind, on wave, and that temple has risen, where the cause of slavery will find neither favor with priests or with people, but be utterly banished from the basement to the steeple. So what happened here is this members of this church broke off and they formed the Trinitarian Congregational Church, which many know, if you look at the history of Fitchburg, they call it the Abolitionist Church. And I'll talk a lot more about that when we get there, but that's basically across from Fitchburg Public Library. Anyway, this is an important place to start because, this is where, the hotbed of activism sort of started to bubble up. Like I said, women started it, and then more joined, and the movement grew and grew until the slavery ended. So, thank you. Thank you. So we're not walking far. The next stop is actually just right here at the Fitchburg City Hall, and we'll talk more when I get over there. Thanks again, Fitchburg High Band. All right. So hopefully everybody can hear me from back there. So obviously this is Fitchburg City Hall. One of the things that I think folks don't know, before this building was obviously reconstructed recently. The last time it was reconstructed was in the 1960s. And if you grew up in Fitchburg like I did, you remember how it looked like the early 1960s in there. It smelled like the early 1960s. But before that, the original, before the 1960s, one of the things that they did in here was take down the amphitheater. There was an amphitheater in the center where city council chambers used to be. There was actually balcony seating, and there were plays and speakers who would come to speak. One of the things I think people don't think about Fitchburg. If you grew up here, you think about it sort of the way it is, right? But in the 1800s, a very vibrant city. It was very. There were a lot of mills still operating. There's a lot more money in the city. People from all the surrounding towns came here to shop, and they came here to come and hear speakers. Some of the speakers that spoke here are people you might have heard of. I mentioned Harriet Beecher Stowe, Emerson, Thoreau. All these folks that are sort of in that time period, authors who are famous, who are activists, were here in City Hall speaking. Last thing, before I do this, I mentioned the Fitchburg Athenaeum. Fitchburg Athenaeum, before the public library existed, was the place where books were stored. All the books were here in the Athenaeum, in the same area where this amphitheater was. And all the original books for the library that we see down there were donated from the Fitchburg Athenaeum. And that's who put on these speakers. The last thing I'll say before we move is, has anybody heard of the movie 12 Years a Slave? So 12 Years a Slave has a connection to Fitchburg. 12 Years a Slave was a book, came out, it was a book originally and a play called The Free Slave. But the movie came out in 2013. And if you don't know the story, it's the story of a guy who was born free up in upstate New York, played the violin. He was very popular in his community. And some fellas came around with a traveling carnival and said, hey, you should play for us. And they presented the money and they said, this is how much we'll pay you if you come and play with us. And they basically brought him down to DC. They got him drunk, and he woke up in a cell. And he woke up in a cell, and they sold him into slavery. And so the reason it's called 12 Years a Slave is because that's how long it took him for his wife to find him and to purchase, to buy his freedom. And the reason, the connection to Fitchburg is this, is that when Solomon Northup, when he was freed, he created a play as an abolitionist. He went around the country performing this play. He performed as himself in the play. And the play was to bring attention to the fight against slavery and to the conditions of slavery. And he performed right here in City Hall. There's in 1850, the play of The Free Slave was performed here. And it was and we found this, my students found this. I work at Mount Wachusett Community College, by the way. And my students had done a lot of the research related to Fitchburg abolitionist history. They found this full-page Sentinel article advertising the play. And it said something, it's on this, on the board that's at the Abolitionist Park, but it said, Solomon Northup will be at the door. He alone is worth 25 cents a sight. So it's pretty cool history that we have as related to the abolitionists, this long abolitionist spirit in Fitchburg. So that's what I got for this one. All right. We're going to stop at Grove Street. There were two stops on Grove, which is right over here. Neither building exists anymore, so I just wanted to point out a few things. On Grove Street here, if you look at this, which is also at the Abolitionist Park, there was an Octagon House. People say, oh, the Octagon House on Main Street. That was a home that was on the Underground Railroad, and it was right here where this bank was. So that's important to know. And that was the Palmer House, Thomas Palmer, who was an abolitionist, also part of the Trinitarian Congregational Church. Further down the street was the home of Martin Becker, who was a black abolitionist. By the way, if you were able to attend our ribbon cutting, we had the family of the first black family to move into Fitchburg back in the 1830s there. The descendants who had spoken, and it's really important to note because black families who are either free or escaped from slavery come and had their freedom settled in Fitchburg because of the abolitionist activity, and many became involved, and that including Martin Becker, who actually, I mentioned Benjamin Snow Jr., the Vice President of the American Anti-Slavery Society. He rented a home from Benjamin Snow right here on Grove Street, and he was a barber here, and one of the things I'm going to talk about when we get to Monument Park is the call to join the armed forces against people who supported slavery. And Martin Becker was one of those folks who said, I'm going to enlist. And he went down, he enlisted and fought in the Civil War. So it's important, to pay homage to that and recognize that history. And we're going to move on to the next stop. No need for music because it's right there. The next two stops are right next to each other, just less than a block away. This structure here, it's not very pretty. It was built in 1989. But the importance is not this building, but the building that stood here beforehand. Basically, this is where the Abolitionist Church was. It was right next to the Senior Center here, across from the original Wallace Library. The Trinitarian Church is the church that was known as the Abolitionist Church. It broke off from the Calvinist Church up at the block, and the reason it was called the Abolitionist Church is because it was founded for the sole purpose of being an abolitionist organization. It actually housed the Western North American Anti-Slavery Society that hosted conferences, regional. That the way the American Anti-Slavery Society was set up, it was a national organization that had chapters, and people would go on the speaking tour. People like Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass spoke here 3 times at the church that was here, as did many of the abolitionists of the time. The founder of the American Anti-Slavery Society, William Lloyd Garrison, was here all the time. These folks, all these same folks, I'll mention this again, but they all stayed at Benjamin Snow's home on Day Street. The other abolitionists that were here, some in Fitchburg, Carolyn Mason. Somebody had said earlier that that they lived in the building where Carolyn Mason lived, which is on Rollstone, up on Rollstone Hill by the cemetery. Carolyn Mason was an abolitionist. She was also founded a newspaper. She was a part of this chapter. The other abolitionists that are renowned, if you study abolitionist history, you've probably heard of the Grimke sisters. Grimke sisters were actually born on a plantation, two white women that went against the grain and came up north and joined the American Anti-Slavery Society, spoke here. Lucy Stone, who is actually from Gardner, spoke here. She was the first woman in the United States to get a bachelor's degree. Also an abolitionist. So it's a really, really important history. And when I say they would hold events like conferences, these weren't conferences for people just to speak and to talk about stuff. This is an activist conference, right? We are gonna do something, what are we gonna do, right? And come up with a plan and execute it and then revisit and meet again until the goals were met. A few things about the church. One of them, maybe not as relevant to folks, but if you're a little older, before the church, when the church closed, and I'll talk about why it closed and what that was like. But before it closed, or after it closed, this became the first Aubuchon hardware. It was called Central Hardware. It was the first store was here, and so they reconstructed the building. They put brick around a wood structure. But back to the abolitionist history, one of the things that that the church held was a bell, 800-pound bell, which, by the way, is in a steeple in Ayer, Massachusetts, the Ayer Federated Church. That bell, I'll start with the positive part of the history, but that bell, Benjamin Snow, he bought it at auction in Concord, basically said, we are not going to ring this bell until every last person in this country is free. And so that bell stood in that steeple until Emancipation Day, and it was rung. The bell was actually on a plantation, a slave plantation down in Mississippi. And if you know anything about the Civil War, the Confederacy, what they would do is they would go house to house and they would confiscate metal, and because they would melt it down into cannon fodder and to weapons. And so they confiscated this bell from the plantation, but it made its way to New Orleans, the capital of the Confederacy. And but the North took New Orleans, right? The Union soldiers came and took it, and they basically confiscated everything that the Confederacy had confiscated and sold that bell up here in Concord, Mass, where Benjamin Snow purchased it. But one of the goals, as somebody was saying earlier, I think it was Sam and Bernie, who are on the board of the Abolitionist Park, is like, we need to get that bell back in Fitchburg, and we got to put it back in the Abolitionist Park. But yeah, the church in Ayer is not moving on that yet. Not yet. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is just here. Oh, actually, one more thing about the church. The church disbanded shortly after slavery was abolished, and it donated the funds. Well, donated the bell to this church, the Ayer Federated Church. Or they might have paid for it. They donated the funds from the church to the Freedmen's Bureau. And if you don't know what the Freedmen's Bureau is, it's basically an organization that was set up to help people who were formerly enslaved to get on their feet. So it was like funds for, as you can imagine, for housing, for food, for anything that you need to get on your feet. This monument is important because, like I said, I got to keep saying, I don't know if people study history. Do people like history, study history? I don't even know.
Oh yeah, love it.
So at the one of the things that happened, people think about like the anti-war protests, right? In the 1960s, people were dodging the draft. People were marching in the streets. They were saying, "No, we're not going to fight this war. It's an unjust war." The same thing was happening in the 1860s. In the 1860s, across the country, there were riots and there were protests, and people were like, "We're not supporting this war. Why are we going to fight against our own people, right? Our own country, right?" So one of the things that happened is a couple things that people might not know. Abraham Lincoln we give Abraham Lincoln a lot of props. But Abraham Lincoln was not going to do this Emancipation Proclamation thing until Frederick Douglass had his ear. Frederick Douglass is in his office all the time being like, "Hey, I got an idea. How about you ask people, you know, if they stand up and fight, that they get their freedom, right? So this idea came from the abolitionist movement. And Frederick Douglass, one of the things that he did is he was encouraging people, black families across the country in the free North, to say, you know what? We're asking our brothers down south to do this and put their lives at risk. We should be doing the same. And so all of his sons enlisted and fought in the Civil War. And he was up here, and that's one of the things they were saying on their tour, the speaking tour around abolition, is like, everybody needs to join the fight. And if you look at that monument, while everywhere else in the country people were rioting and protesting against the war, people here, because of the abolitionist activity, were enlisting. And there's a plaque on there. I can't see it, so I can't read it. But if folks want to take a second to go over and read, it basically talks about how people joined the war effort to fight in the Civil War to abolish slavery, right? And that's you know, that's just not something that's a common thread in all of the U.S. Where people were being drafted, right? So this was not originally a stop, but I could not pass by here without paying my respects to, sorry, get choked. To Brother Adrian Ford for the work. He held it down in this community, which is a historically black community, by the way. This is where most of the folks in the abolitionist movement lived and worked and breathed. And in the at least in my time in the 90s, growing up in Fitchburg, we used to come to Three Pyramids all the time, and it was a vibrant community center. And I just need to stop and pay respect. See, his name is on this sign here, Adrian Ford, and for the work that he did in this community. He was a civil rights leader here in Fitchburg and an important part of our history. So although it was 100 years after the abolition of slavery, that fight continued, and at the fore of that fight was Adrian Ford. Get into this, I got to say one more thing about Adrian. I have to say this. When we were fighting to build the Abolitionist Park, which is the last stop on this route, we were looking at a lot over here, 116 Day Street, to build the park, and there were folks fighting us on it. The city officials were fighting all kinds of reasons for why they wouldn't support it. Gave us all kinds of coded language, racist language. Around why they didn't want to support it, and even when we were trying to become Friends of Fitchburg Abolitionist Park, Three Pyramids and Adrian stepped forward and he said, "We want to support you," and they became our first fiscal agent. So I wanted to just mention that as well because it's very important. So I'm going to talk about this building in a minute, but the building that I'm actually going to talk about most doesn't exist, and the reason we know about that building is because the vice president of the American Anti-Slavery Society, Benjamin Snow, lived here between here and on Waverly Street, Waverly and Day, before Day Street existed. Well, Day Street existed up to here. And we know this because his daughter wrote a narrative in 1909 when the building was torn down to make way for Day Street. The importance of this building that was here is that it was a depot on the Underground Railroad, and all of the abolitionists that I spoke about, all those famous abolitionists that came through on the speaking tours, they all stayed in Benjamin Snow's home. And we also have some prominent folks, well-known folks who escaped slavery, who are en route seeking money for their freedom, who also stayed at Benjamin Snow's house. And I'm going to speak a little bit about that. One of them you may have heard, if you know history, you know the local history, you may have heard of Shadrach Minkins. Shadrach Minkins is one of the first people arrested under the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. He was working in Boston, and just like we can draw parallels today, you know, somebody basically was like, hey, that guy, basically the Fugitive Slave Act said, if you report somebody you know was formerly enslaved, if you don't report them and you know, you can go to jail, you can be fined. But if you do, you get a reward. And so if somebody said, oh, this guy right here, he was a former slave, he owned a barber shop in Boston, they arrested him. The cool part about this history is that because on the day that he was being tried, he was in a court in Boston, there were hundreds of black abolitionists in the streets. And they got so impatient, they brought him to the street, and the U.S. Marshals were afraid. They were like, man, what are we gonna do about this? And they just let him go. And they brought him to a safe house in Concord, and then they brought him to Leominster. If you haven't heard, there's a house in Leominster of Frances Drake. There's a school named after her in Leominster as well. That was a recent fight to have named after her. Frances Drake was a woman, again, women at the forefront of the abolitionist movement in this area. When Shadrach Minkins came, they ate dinner at the Drake House in Leominster, and then they dressed Shadrach Minkins as a woman to kind of disguise him, brought him to Fitchburg, to Benjamin Snow's house. You know, they had a meeting there, and then in the evening they had a meeting over at if y'all know where Snow Mill Pond is, it's named after Benjamin Snow. There was a mill owned by Benjamin Snow and Samuel Crocker. Probably heard of the Crocker family. It's all over everything in Fitchburg, right? He was an abolitionist as well. They had a meeting at the mill, and they gathered of abolitionists with Shadrach, and they gathered money, and they gave him money, put him on a train going to Vermont. So he put him on a freight train to Vermont. He got off there, waited for Lake Champlain to freeze, and walked to his freedom to Canada. That's one person that's really important in history, connection to Fitchburg. Another one, I mentioned earlier, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. Sold over 1 million copies. What people don't know is that that book was based on a slave narrative by a man, what's his, sorry, my brain. Why am I forgetting? Anyway, it was named, sorry. I'm having a little brain issue. Anyway, I'll get to it. I'll remember in a minute. It was a slave narrative written about, basically, this is what my experience was in slavery, right? And she based the character Uncle Tom on this person. Unfortunately, the way that she portrayed Uncle Tom has led to a stereotype and a derogatory thing. The reality about Uncle Tom is actually that he was an abolitionist himself, right? He actually, after he came here to the Snow's house, he actually came here twice to ask for, to raise money to buy his freedom. He actually moved to Toronto and opened up a school for formerly enslaved people to get on their feet, to help with literacy and also to help folks get. So to me, the person we're speaking about is sort of like we learn about Booker T. Washington. He's sort of like an early Booker T. Washington, right? Josiah Henson. Sorry, I don't know why my brain was not. It's not on the paper in front of me, but Josiah Henson was his name. Know his name, please. and know that the way that he was portrayed in Uncle Tom's Cabin is not true. So the other thing I want to say here is it's interesting. It's not really part of the abolitionist history, but this house right here was illegally built on the Snow's property. So Benjamin Snow, the abolitionist, was ill and he was hospitalized. And while he was hospitalized, his wife was taking care of the property. And because she was a woman, this is more women's history, she went away on a vacation. And actually, the caretaker of the property built this house without her permission. And she fought it, and you can look it up. You can look it up in the records, in the Massachusetts Supreme Court records, where she fought and she lost. And the guy was still able to build his house on her property. But anyway, that's not abolitionist history, but I thought it was kind of interesting. The building still stands. This is actually the inspiration for why we had the conversation about building the Abolitionist Park. Has anybody ever heard of, raise your hand if you ever heard of Bloody Kansas? We got some folks know what it is, right? So Bloody Kansas, oftentimes people think about abolitionist John Brown. So John Brown was an abolitionist who was very strong in his faith and believed, that he was going to fight to death, and he did fight to death for the abolition of slavery. He's known for the Harper's Ferry raid, where they raided an armory to basically get guns to give to enslaved folks to fight. But Bloody Kansas is a little bit before that. And the reason it's important to Fitchburg, is very important to Fitchburg. One is basically 50 people, abolitionists from Fitchburg, got on a train to Kansas to settle Kansas to prevent it from becoming a slave state. So if you don't know the history, with any state, is it going to be a plantation, or is it going to be a place for people from the Northeast to move out and settle, right? And so people went out there and they fought. And Bloody Kansas refers to most of the people that went from Fitchburg to go there were massacred by pro-Confederacy militia. And when that happened, then John Brown took revenge, right? And that's what Bloody Kansas is known as, is the revenge against the Confederacy, the pro-Confederate militia. A couple other important facts. This is weird, right? You talk about Kansas and we're in Fitchburg, right? That the first chancellor of Kansas State University was from Fitchburg. It was actually Benjamin Snow's son. The first governor of Kansas was from Fitchburg. It was George Trask, the minister of the Abolitionist Church. His son was the first governor of Kansas. So weird, right? But it's pretty cool history.
How's everybody doing on this beautiful day that the Lord has made for us to rejoice in? Hallelujah. My name is Ruby Hall. I am the co-chair of the board of the Abolitionist Park. And we as a board just want to welcome each and every one of you for taking the time to come out and celebrate with us. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to come here. So we just want to say thank you.
Thanks so much, Ruby. My name is David Thibault Munoz. I'm one of the founding members of the board. I wanted to take, obviously, a moment to thank you all, as Ruby said, for taking time out of your day to be here. I wanted to recognize we have Dr. Day, if you could. I just want to say, there's obviously, we're going to talk, we can talk a lot about the abolitionist history. We just led a tour. It's all on the board here. It's on the panel over here. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. But what I wanted to speak about with regard to this park is that this was a vacant lot, and it was not one. It isn't here because we said we wanted to create a park, and actually it was students from Mount Wachusett Community College that were clearing a lot or two lots, one on Wood Street, one on Day Street. Dr. Day, who's here, was a part of that in the early stages. Mayor Scalia was there drawing up the architectural plans for the park. This is back in 2018. It's really important because there was some resistance to it. There was a lot of resistance to it on the part of the city council, on the part of some other officials, property owners in this area. And at the end of the day, is because the people in this community, in the spirit of activism, which is what we celebrate here at the Abolitionist Park, because this is a spirit that runs deep in our country's history, is when there's an injustice, people stood up against it. And when people want things in the name of justice, they fight for it. And that's part of this history. Just to say a few things here is that this, you can see on the bricks here and on the benches, these are all commemorative of people from this community who supported this project, that have a history with this park, and because of the fight and because of the success of that, we raised $180,000 to build this park. By the way, grassroots fundraising, mostly $20, $50, right? The city, thank you. The city invested here, right? The city put in new sidewalks. We didn't ask for that, right? They put in the new sidewalks. They put in light here. This lot belongs to Fitchburg State. Fitchburg State stepped forward and said, we want you to build the park here after we were denied the lot on Day Street that we're originally proposing. So anyway, I just wanted to pay respect to that. And to all the board members and former board members that are up here. I mentioned Dr. Day, Mayor Scalia. My daughters, Azucena and Ishel, were part of the original founding out here. Ruby was part of the original group. And then Bernie and Greg, and now Izzy is the president. Izzy was actually a Mount Wachusett student and created this really cool magazine about the park. So, welcome. Anyway, thank you. And with that, we're going to turn it over to Pastor Annie to say some important words in this, also in the spirit of the abolitionist movement. Yeah.
Woo! Give it up. I don't hear nothing out there. You all are really quiet. Come on now. This is history. This is history. History in the making. And in the spirit of those that came before us and what they did for us, we are here today. We're here standing on the backs of those that took those beatings and whippings and every no and every door slammed in their face when it came to freedom. So we're celebrating freedom today. Today, Juneteenth, June 19th. This is Freedom Day. It's called Black Freedom Day, but in our spirit, it's freedom for all of us. Freedom for all of us to be together, to come together, and to know one another. So, he shouldn't have asked, a Baptist pastor to come and say that. No. So in that spirit, all minds and hearts clear. We just want to lift up the Spirit of God everywhere. We want to lift up every faith, every organization that's here. We want to lift up the spirit of those that came before us, those that are coming after us, and those that are with us right now, making things happen. So I just want to say thank you, and I want to say thank you to our mayor for being here today, and thank you, God, for allowing all of us to be here together and for all of us to come together and celebrate this Juneteenth, 2026. Whoa, we going way back. I heard him say 2018, but I just say thank you, God, and thank you to all of our spirits, all of our higher powers that's here today. We recognize you, we see you, we adore you, and we reverence you on today. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Annie. I want to mention one more thing. Actually, Ruby is a co-chair opened up for us today. Actually, Ruby was a part of this from the beginning. Actually, the First Church of God in Christ right here on Snow Street, she's a part of, has been a part of this park and this project since the beginning. The first meeting presentation of this that the students held about the proposal to build a park was held at the First Church of God in Christ, and the former mayor Dina Talley was present at that presentation. So thank you for that. And by the way, First Church of God in Christ is the oldest black church in North Central Massachusetts. Yes, it is. So what we're going to do now, I want to just thank, again, the board. Some folks have stepped up, some folks are coming on new. So before we begin the program, I wanted to recognize one, Greg Smith, who's actually been on the board for about 3 years now. 3 years is going to be stepping down. It's unfortunate, but he's made great contributions to the website, and he's a historian. I met him about 3.5 years ago, and I said, man, you need to be on the board, because he was like really passionate about local abolitionist history, and he's made a great contribution. So thank you for your work. Yes, he's still volunteering. And then we have some new board members who are coming on. Jim Rowe, who's over here. Jim Rowe is a local activist from the area, from the Air Shirley area. If you don't know, we're pretty much built at the park. We have some ideas about possibly bringing a bell that's at the Air Federated Church that used to be at the Abolitionist Church in Fitchburg to Fitchburg. So if you're interested in that fight and trying to get that bell back to Fitchburg, please let us know. We maybe potentially could be adding some interactive options on this the board that you see in front of you here. That's another thing that might be. But mainly, we're moving forward with the exploration of becoming our own not-for-profit. Right now, our fiscal agent is Newview. Prior to that, I have to give thanks to Three Pyramids for being our first fiscal agent. This is when Mr. Adrian Ford learned about what we were talking about. He was like, yes, please. And the next board member, actually, in relation to Adrian, who's, I mentioned I had to stop by Three Pyramids on the tour and got choked up about it, but really important. When in our first conversations, we talked about a person who used to live at this lot right here, Doris Collins, Collins, I should know, because I grew up with Collins family. Actually, there's a brook around here for I didn't know. What he had told me is that he said, you know, at this lot, we used to come here a lot. Everybody in the community would come here and gather and eat, have meal, break bread at Miss Collins' home, and also one day I was over here and Courtney, and it was over here. Courtney is also joining our board. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you. Mrs. Collins, what we didn't know then is, and that bench in the back here is dedicated to her, is that she was a deaconess at the First Church of God in Christ, and she was president of the board of the Three Pyramids right over here. And so she was a very important figure in this community, and we always want to pay respect to that as well. Thank you, Courtney. Also joining the board, one of the things that we're moving toward are becoming a not-for-profit and really becoming a space where there's a lot more programming like you see today, right? One of the things that when Fitchburg State stepped forward and said that they were interested in developing the park here, or us developing the park on their property, they were looking at Three Pyramids, and they were saying that they were going to create a early childhood education incubator, and this would be an outdoor classroom. So one of the things that we're really excited about moving forward is that we want to have programming around activism. So we bring folks like Jim on board. We want to have programming around education and history. And the next person that's joining the board is actually Courtney's wife, Carly Mills, who is an early childhood education educator And so that's really important to us. Thank you. And actually, it was Carly that led the initiative to raise the money to the bench, to buy the bench, to get the folks along with Courtney to donate money to the park. And so that's really awesome to have them here. And who am I? Oh, Franco. Franco over here, who's going to be our sound guy today, is also joining the board, is a local musician and coordinates gigs for musicians in the area. And so, again, another important person to have on the board as we're moving forward to change the park from an annual celebration of what we've done here at the park in terms of development to a space where there's always programming here and always positive things going on. So that's all I have today for my speaking piece. I'm going to turn it over to Diego, who's I always have to say this, but Diego Barahona, I met him, I think he was in 7th or 8th grade, and he was giving a presentation about anti-colonialism and reclaiming Arawak culture and uniting people from the islands of Haiti and Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Cuba, around a common ancestry. And I was just blown away. I've never met a person that young speaking on that level about history and colonialism, and so fired about the fight against colonialism. So I want to welcome him up here to speak about what he's going to be doing for his presentation. Thank you, Diego. Oh, Diego is also joining the board. Thank you. What's that? Oh, yeah. Actually, right before that, we have Spanish American Center and the ice cream truck from Pop Sweetheart, are going to be, it's all free. So please take advantage of that while you're here and get your grub on. And also, thank you to the North Central Mass Community Foundation, who's going to be funding our effort to become a not-for-profit and to put on programming at the park.
Good morning, everyone. I hope we're all having an amazing day. I am so glad that God has given us a great day to celebrate this event today. My name is Diego Barahona, but my name in Taino is Guatuniki. I am here with my group, the Guaribononacan, and members of the Fitchburg High School Chorus to bring to you a very special presentation. Today is Juneteenth, a very important day where finally slavery was fully abolished throughout the nation. And we are here to honor that and remember the suffering, the lies, the misdeeds, the crimes that were done against African Americans by colonizers who came to what was once called Turtle Island. Brought slavery, murder, disease, and agony to those who weren't white on this land. I have seen many people ask, why is Juneteenth important? Why should we care about something that happened in the past? Right now, my answer is because it's happening in different forms today. And we have forgotten the past to hide from the sins this country has made instead of learning from them like cowards. The song my group will present is called Agua de la Libertad, made by Riestra y Los Bojiques. This song has a very important place in my heart because it talks about an actual abolitionist movement that happened in the 1800s in Puerto Rico. Dr. Betancé and Segundo Ruy Belvis in Puerto Rico formed a secret abolitionist society in 1857. And back then, slaves who were not baptized costed less. So the abolitionist society took advantage of that. And they would pull off what was called Agua de la Libertad by giving the necessary funds to the parents of the child to pay for their child's freedom at the church before they were baptized. And they would free slaves in that way. Now, when I look at modern day America, I see a similar pattern, but in a way different. Slavery isn't a thing, at least to my knowledge today. But there is detainment. There are still children who are not free. There are children in what we call detainment centers, when they're actually in cages. separated from their families, their parents, their friends, and elementary schools. Not middle schools. We're talking elementary schools. Let that sink in. Does it sound familiar? How many of you think that sounds very familiar? Where children are separated from their parents because of a system that chooses to do so. Unfortunately, unlike back then, we can't buy the freedom of these children and save them, or even the people in general who are labeled aliens or illegals. I want us to take a moment, close our eyes, and listen. Can you hear it? Close your eyes. Can you hear it? Each child crying for their mother, for their parents, asking for proper food, begging for freedom in a cage that isn't their home, that isn't their school, that isn't the comfort of their own mother's arms. They are separated, alone, where no one's caring for them. Can you hear their screams? Can you hear them begging for freedom? In English, in Spanish, in any native tongue that they grew up with? I can. Every time. So, we are going to sing for them. We're going to dance and we're going to pray for them.
En la iglesia Mayagüez vimos un día pasar un esclavo y una esclava, un esclavo y una esclava, para su niño bautizar en los brazos de su padre. Oí a un niño llorar, era hijo de un esclavo, era hijo de una esclava, en la pila bautismal. Agua es la libertad. Agua es la libertad. Ese niño inocente que aún no puede caminar, es esclavo en nacimiento, es esclavo en nacimiento, antes de poder hablar. Con Ruiz, Belvin y Betance se formó una sociedad secreta abolicionista, secreta abolicionista en la clandestinidad. Agua es la libertad. Me voy a bautizar a Mayagüez. Agua es la libertad. No hay palabras para expresar esta gran felicidad. Que aunque sigo siendo esclavo, mi niño tiene libertad. En el día de la abolición, muchos años tardará, pero mi consuelo es que mi niño tiene libertad. Agua es la libertad. Bautizar a Mayagüez. Agua es la libertad. Bautizar. Doctor Betance, nosotros queremos libertad. Doctor Betance, nosotros queremos libertad. Oye, Ruiz Belvin, segundo Ruiz Belvin, nosotros queremos libertad. Doctor Betance, hoy niño es libre, vamos todos a celebrar. Agua es la libertad. Agua es la libertad. Agua es la libertad. Agua es la libertad. Doctor Betance, nosotros queremos 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 libertad. Pasa un día pasa, un esclavo y una esclava, un esclavo y una
I
esclava.
am so happy that many of us came to dance and many of us came to pray and to dance in unity, because that's what the abolitionist movement is about. It's about unity. It's about advocating for those who can't stand up for themselves. This song is talking about a child who is going to Mayagüez to be freed. But we can't do that now. We can't take children from detainment centers to go to Mayagüez to be free. Right now, we have to advocate for them. Right now, as mothers, as grandparents, as aunts, as uncles, we have to stand up and advocate for the voices of those who can't advocate for themselves. There are children who can't even speak up for themselves, who can't even speak the same language to people who don't even speak their language either. So their voices are silenced. And because they're children, people take advantage. That's what the abolitionist movement is about. Standing up for those who can't speak for themselves. Thank you, everyone.
Give it up for Garibono Nakan. Thank you. And this is exactly, I really, when I was thinking about restructuring the board, I thought a lot about activists like Diego, right? Diego is, you know, really important. This is the legacy that we want to continue to run in the U.S. is that this is a country of people who love freedom. I wanted to, just real quick, I know I was talking a little smack earlier, but I want to recognize the counselors, most or all of which were not on the council at the time when they shot it down. So here I see Joe Bowen, Councilor Bowen, is around here somewhere. Of course, Bernie Schultz, Councilor Schultz, who's on our board. Council President Zarella over here, thank you. And earlier we had Councilor Beth Walsh on the tour. So thank you all for your support and for being here. I am going to turn it over. Next, actually, our next is please welcome the, also I want to thank the chorus, FHS chorus that performed just now. So thank you for them. Now we're gonna turn to, earlier there was a flag raising of the Juneteenth flag. We do the same here, we're gonna do a Juneteenth flag raising. And the Boy Scouts troop that's here, troop number 41 from Fitchburg is going to be raising the Juneteenth flag along with the US flag. And thank you to the Fitchburg High School band who just marched with us for the tour, who are gonna also be doing a song along with the flag raising. So we appreciate you all. Thank you. Let's give a round of applause for Fitchburg High Band and for the Boy Scouts. Thank you.